Hey everyone, I'm Adam Sweet from Soul Astrology, and today we have edition number 16 of the Anonymous Birth Charts. This is a series in which I do bite-sized readings based on charts and questions submitted by you all. Let me go ahead and share the chart that we're going to take a look at for today. And the question that was submitted with this chart says, I realize that I have been hesitant with some major life choices related to starting a business and pursuing my entrepreneurial dreams. I often have a strong idea and a clear vision for success, and I take major preparatory steps, like building a website, branding, etc. However, when a real commitment is needed, such as putting myself out there on social media, I completely bail, likely due to fear of failure, and the cycle repeats. I believe the core of what I want to ask is, how can I stop worrying and become more brave? All right. So when I first read this question, what popped into my mind is the great archetypal psychologist James Hillman's book, A Blue Fire, where he discusses the distinction between spirit and soul and how that's related to the sun and the moon. And a really beautiful thing that he says in there is that, like the sun, spirit is that quintessential mountaintop peak experience, that transcendental, transcendent experience. On the other hand, like the moon, soul is that ever-changing, messy, chaotic, down in the valley experience of life and death, childbirth, and the messiness and yucky, muddy animals and all the things that life in the valley incorporates and is part of all of our everyday lives. And because the moon is constantly changing its face, moving, zigging, and zagging, snaking throughout the sky, it represents the material world and also represents the soul. Now, he says, which I think is so beautiful, that where the soul is really nurtured is actually down in the valley. When it becomes, you could say, accepting or communing with those daily experiences. It is nurtured down in the depths of the valley where life is not perfect. Now, up on the mountaintop where those peak experiences are happening, that may be the perfect expression of a transcendent spiritual experience, but those experiences, although wonderful, are very fleeting. So when I looked at this chart, I saw something really beautiful. And that is the fact that both luminaries in this chart are conjunct planets, outer planets, that also mirror that same story. So we have the sun, which is that archetypal expression of the perfected or perfect realm of the gods, conjunct Neptune. It is just flowing forth from a conjunction with Neptune. And Neptune is that planet that represents that spiritual ideal or romanticism of that perfect realm. On the other hand, we have the moon conjunct Pluto, and Pluto is that planet of transformation, but transformation that happens by going down into the valley, into the underworld, where failure is imminent and life is messy and chaotic, but generally we come out of it with what is called riches in the ancient world, and that's because Pluto ruled those underground worlds where you find riches. But metaphorically, you come out of those transformational, difficult experiences with the riches that nourish your soul and make you into a more wholesome, soulful person. So that conjunct the moon is a mirror of that exact description, where we have that transformation that nourishes our body, mind, and soul, but through being fully committed to the messy reality of failure and all the things that go with, in this case, starting a business or putting yourself out there. The beautiful thing about this chart is that these two aspects are in sextile. Now, sextiles are of the nature of Venus, which means there is a harmonious interaction taking place here. And it may be the work of this native's life in terms of this dynamic to find a way to harmonize those aspects and be willing to have that soulful experience that is not perfect and is messy, and you are encountering failures while starting a business and putting yourself out there. But ultimately, that is what helps you reach towards that transcendent peak experience of starting your business and putting yourself out there in a way that is uncomfortable at first, but ultimately feels good and pushes you towards your dreams. Now, when might that happen? Well, as we always do, we can look towards transits of outer planets that may be aspecting those dynamics in the birth chart. So I dialed up the transits, and the first date that really popped out to me is early September of 2026. We have both those dynamics being activated by outer planets. So we have transiting Jupiter squaring that Moon-Pluto conjunction, thus activating that dynamic. And we have transiting Saturn squaring that Sun-Neptune dynamic, activating that. And as a bonus, we also have transiting Neptune squaring the ruler of that house, Saturn, natal Saturn there, ruling that 11th house of our hopes and dreams. So when might the native be able to step into that dynamic or that uncomfortable place of finally being willing to put themselves out there in the world and take those risks? Well, I would look towards this early fall date of next year, 2026, and say that that is a prominent time when that karma may come to the forefront. And when that happens, we always have a chance to change that natal promise that is present in the chart by it being activated, by being conscious with it, by being present with how we are expressing those dynamics in our life. And it's wonderful and beautiful and always magical and amazing how those things can change when we are just bringing awareness and consciousness to them. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I hope that this anonymous native found this reading very helpful for today. If any of you out there would like a birth chart reading like the one you saw today, send me your birth data and a question to adam@soulastrology.com, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it. I really appreciate you watching, everybody, today. Thanks so much. Take care, and bye.